Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. On behalf of the entire STP team, we wish you all a very happy and prosperous new year. May this year bring you hope, courage, happiness, health, and success. And we all welcome you to the opening episode of our STP training webinar series for 2020. And we start our year with the hottest topic on technology front of late, artificial intelligence. And the title for our webinar today is The Impact of AI on Enterprise Testing. Our guest speaker who is joining us today on the webinar is Raj Subramanian. I'm Smita Mishra. I'm a tester myself and a sustainability enthusiast too. And I'm super excited today to host you all and Raj on our STP webinars. It's the first one of the year. Incidentally, Raj is also our keynote speaker for the upcoming conference, Spring 2020 STPCon, which is coming up at San Diego from March 30th to April 2nd. And Raj, from all I remember, I've been seeing you at STPCon of late very frequently at the conference. And I know you like it. I mean, I absolutely love the conference. But I would like to hear from you. What exactly are your thoughts about STPCon? What keeps bringing, what brings you back?
So STPCon, I've started going to STPCon since 2011. And what makes me come to the conference again and again is they have a really good mix of topics, and also their mix of new speakers and experienced speakers as well. In fact, funny story is I started my speaking gig with STPCon in 2011. So I gave my first presentation in 2011 at STPCon, and since then I've close to 100 speaking gigs. So it's because of STPCon encouraging people, new people and experienced people. People like me can actually, share the experiences. So that's what I like, the mixture of topics and the people.
That's great. I absolutely love that too about STP. And did you get a chance to look at the program, the upcoming program this year? Is there anything that really excites you or something that you are looking forward to attend?
Yeah, I do like the variety of topics which is there in the spring conference. I saw there were some leadership conferences, AI conferences, then some automation conferences as well. Automation topics as well. And also there's some topics on mindfulness and even recruiting. So I'm looking forward to specifically go to the topics related to automation and leadership. So I think that's what will be interesting for me this time.
Absolutely. I mean, year on year, I have, great choices for you. And year on year, I've seen STPCon getting stronger on automation, performance, leadership. Yeah, these topics are something worth attending. So great, Raj. Great to have you here. The full program for the conference is already published. You can avail the early bird pricing until 14th of February. Teams and alumni registrations can save even more. So if you have any further queries with respect to sponsoring, attending, or team registrations, please send an email to info@softwaretestpro.com, and definitely visit the conference site, stpcon.com, for all the details. And in 2020, we are inviting proposals for webinars from all of you. The good part is this shall be open all year round, so you can submit anytime you are ready. But we will begin filling the slots as soon as we come across meaningful content and inspiring speakers. We have already filled up our slots for the first quarter. If you have any idea of, if you have an idea and wish to be considered for the webinars second quarter onwards, do send in your proposals as soon as possible. All the details along with the submission form are at the link given on the screen. Definitely go through them. And in case you have any recommendations on topics or speakers, again, please feel free to email us. We'll be happy to hear from you. Quick information for you before we move forward. There is an upcoming webinar, the ROI for test automation. Are you missing it? It's on 22nd of January, 2020. The speaker is Paul Merrill, who is the CEO and principal consultant at Beaufort Fairmont LLC. In this talk, you can learn what your ROI could be with test automation and how streamlining the process of developing digital assets starts with sound technical practices and how it can and cannot be measured within your organization. The link is up for you to register. Please do go for it. And if you are on Twitter, please share the conference and conference details and about this webinar with your followers, connections. You can add STP's Twitter handle to your tweets, which is @SoftwareTestPro. Please do add the hashtag STP webinar to your tweets. You can also note down the Twitter handle for Raj, which is Epsilon11. Feel free to reach out to Raj on his Twitter, follow him, and should you wish to discuss anything further on the topic, he'll be happy to take up the discussions. All right, Raj, let's get started with your webinar. And welcome, and we are very excited to have you with us today. And let me quickly introduce you for all of us here. Raj is a speaker, writer, and coach at Chai Latte Consulting, very interesting name. He develops developer tools and he helps developer tools and or services companies build awareness, increase organic website traffic, and generate leads through content creation and social influencer marketing. He also provides test consulting, training, and coaching to make people and processes more effective. He actively contributes thought leadership and enrichment to the software community through conference talks, contributed articles, blogs, and YouTube videos, where he shares development, testing, leadership, and productivity experiences gained through various development projects. You can read Raj's expertise on his personal website, which is rajsubra.com. And now let's get started on learning how to go about basics of AI and discuss the key ways software testing can benefit from AI. So Raj, the floor is all yours now.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. So you should be able to see my screen now. Cool.
Yes.
Thanks, Smita, for the introduction. And I'm super excited to be giving this webinar, especially the opening webinar for 2020. So I feel privileged and special, I should say. So I'm not going to go into details about me because Smita already mentioned that. If you want more details about what I do, my writing, my articles, my blogs, the things I share to the community, all those things are present in these links. I also have a YouTube channel where I share my ideas on leadership, motivation, testing, development as well. So if you're interested, just check out these links and you can visit my website as well. So let's just get straight into the topic for today. So this is going to be the agenda where first I'm going to cover some basics of AI because I'm going to use different AI terminologies, related terminologies, and I want to make sure everyone is on the same page and same understanding. And then I'm going to talk about what are the current challenges with testing, especially in the field of test automation, because there are a lot of challenges. And then I talk about how AI can help to solve these challenges. And then finally discuss what the future of AI-based testing is going to be. So let's first talk about some basics of AI. So on a really high level, we have these three classifications because a lot of people use these terminologies really loosely and people are often confused on what is machine learning, deep learning, AI, neural networks, so on and so forth. So first we have artificial intelligence. So AI is the area of computer science that deals with building machines that can work and think like human beings. So that is AI. Under AI, we have machine learning. So machine learning is a field of study that deals with giving the computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. It kind of evolved from the study of pattern recognition and computational theory. And that's what machine learning is. And under machine learning, you have what is called deep learning. So deep learning kind of evolved from the neural networks of the human body. So in our human body, we have billions and billions of neurons, and each of these neurons interact with each other to cause different actions and reactions. So me speaking right now, blinking my eyes, shaking my hands, which you cannot see because it's a webinar, but the point is all these reactions are caused by these neuron interactions. So they took this concept of the neural network and applied it to the area of computer science. And that's how we have deep learning. So to get into a little bit more details on machine learning and deep learning, so we have a broad classification of machine learning, and this is what a lot of people usually talk about. So we have three types of classifications when it comes to machine learning, and this most commonly used these days. We have, oops, 1 second, hold on here. Sorry about that. Cool. So we have three types of classifications. So first, let's talk about supervised learning. Supervised learning is when you give labeled data sets and you're trying to make the AI model learn from those data sets. So say, for example, you're building an AI model to detect images of buttons from a list of images, right? Say you're building an AI model for that. The way you're going to go about doing that is you're going to give image of a round button and label it as round, then image of a square button, label it as square, and then you may give something which is not a button and and label it as not a button, and you feed this into the AI model and you constantly keep training it, right? So you're giving label data sets. And under supervised learning, you have two models which are used. We have regression model and a classification model. So say, for example, say there's a restaurant in a location and you want to build an AI model to predict in a 2-hour time frame how much tips people give in that restaurant in the 2 hours, right? Say that's your example or scenario. You may use a regression model when you want to make predictions on continuous set of values. Say, for example, you want to make predictions on how much tip amount a person gives in the 2-hour time frame. The tip amount is a continuous set of values because some people would give 5%, 10%, 20%, right? So to make predictions on those kind of scenarios, you use a regression model. Then you have what is called a classification model. Classification model is when you want to make predictions on finite data sets. So taking the same example, say you want to know how much tip a male gives compared to a female, right? So now you're trying to make predictions on male and female. Those are the only two options, right? And so for that, you're going to use classification model. So these are the common models used under supervised learning. Then you have what is called unsupervised learning. Unsupervised learning is when you give a bunch of data and then you're trying to figure out different patterns which the AI models can come up with, right? And they're not labeled like supervised learning. And under unsupervised learning, the model used is called clustering model. So AT&T, let's take an example for this. So cellular companies like AT&T, Verizon, they use clustering models for target segmentation. For say, for example, I live in Chicago, and what AT&T does is they give certain advertisements for people under the age of 30, and they give certain advertisements for people over the age of 55, right? So they segment their advertisements, and for that they use unsupervised learning and the clustering model. Then you have what is called reinforced learning. Reinforced learning is uh, basically rewarding good and bad behavior. Simple example is training a dog. So when you tell a dog, say sit, and if it rolls, then you say bad dog and you don't give it a treat, so you don't reward it. But when you say sit and if the dog sits, then you reward it, right? Now, cheesecake, for example, will be a good reward model for me, but AI models do not work on food, right? So how do AI models get rewarded? AI models get rewarded through positive and negative values. Let's take an example for it. Say you're training an autonomous car and you feed it the image of a straight road, and if it actually turns left, then you would give some negative values to let the algorithm know that, hey, what you did was wrong, right? And then these AI models are trained to uh, optimize itself to get as many positive values as possible. So the next time when you say give it an image of a road, right turn road, and then if it turns right, and when you give it a positive value, then it knows, okay, that's the right thing to do. But anywho, so that's how reinforced learning works in a nutshell. So these are the broad classifications. Talking about deep neural networks, I don't want to get into too much details because it could get confusing, but on a high level, this is how it works. You have some inputs, then you have what is called weighted sums, and those are passed into what is called an activation function. And all these things are just mathematical functions. And this activation function could be sigmoid, ReLU, ELU. There are a lot of activation functions. And then you get an output, which in turn becomes an input for another set of nodes, and it keeps going on, right? This is how deep neural network kind of works from an architecture perspective. But now you would say, okay, all this theory is well and good, but tell me how it actually works in action, right? So for that, I actually took a really raw example. So I'm assuming a majority of the people attending this webinar today have virtual assistants like Google Home, Alexa, right? So let's take Alexa as an example, and let's talk about how the AI model inside Alexa works. And this good example of how AI model training works as well. So the first thing you're going to tell Alexa is you're going to ask it a question. So say, for example, you say, what's the weather today? When you say that, four things actually happen underneath the hood. The first thing is what is called the trigger word detection. So when you say, hey, Alexa, Alexa is a trigger word. So it's constantly looking for the trigger word. And what they do is they train the AI model with the trigger word in different accents. For example, me, I have a Indian American accent. People in Europe have a different accent. Asia have a different accent. So they train the AI model with different accents of the trigger word Alexa. The next thing which happens is speech recognition. So when you say, what's the weather today? It tries to identify keywords in what you're trying to say using natural language processing. So in this case, the keyword here is weather, and the AI model automatically understands that, hey, I think he's asking about the weather because I detect a keyword there. And the next thing which happens is called intent recognition. What's the intent of your question? So when you say, what's the weather today? Since it has already identified the keyword in the second step, it tries to associate it with the other keywords it knows already. So it's trying to figure out whether you're asking for time, making a call, or you're asking it to tell a joke or play music. But in this case, you're asking the weather. So behind each of these keywords, there are already code associated with these keywords. So once it matches a weather keyword with the keyword database it already has, it just executes the code under that keyword, and then you hear Alexa saying it is 25 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, based on which region you live in. So this is a really high level example of how AI model training works, okay? There are a lot of open source libraries available to build your own neural networks. My favorite is brain.js, and this is my GitHub link, so you could just download my repo, and you yourself can just play around and build your own neural networks as well. It is actually pretty simple. In fact, I'm currently working on a neural network where, based on the tweet you give, it is going to identify whether the tweet was from Donald Trump or Kim Kardashian. Yeah, it's a fun project I'm working on. But again, if you just Google all these libraries, there's a lot of help online, and you can build your own neural networks as well. So now, hopefully, you get some idea on the basics of AI and what the different terminologies mean. And now we can get into the real meat of this talk, which is how AI is helping to solve challenges with testing. So for that, first, we need to understand what are the current challenges in testing, specifically in the areas of test automation. So let's talk about these challenges quickly. So we have 5 broad challenges which have existed for the past 30 years with test automation. And you have the skill set, authoring, challenges of initial states, challenge of maintenance, and scale. So let's discuss what each of these actually mean. So let's first talk about the skill set challenge. So getting skilled testers is time consuming, first thing, and it's also um, expensive because skilled testers, based on which region you are from, they are expensive and needs quite a bit of investment. So that's a big challenge for companies, especially startups who do not have enough money to invest in skilled testers. So what they end up doing is they just have a couple of people, say developers or business people, just doing some basic testing manually. And because of that, release cycles get affected because a lot of bugs do not get caught in time, and it affects the whole life cycle of the product. So skill set is a challenge which is happening. The next challenge is the challenge of authoring. So now you hired skilled testers and you're all excited. But then what happens is some of these skilled testers fail to pay attention to basic concepts of writing automation code, like doing data-driven testing, parameterizing your test, making reusable components. They fail to pay attention to those important concepts. And because of that, you have unstable automation code, which in turn affects release cycles. And that's a big challenge for companies as well. Then you have the challenge of initialization states. So what do I mean by that? Say, for example, you have Amazon, right? And you write a simple automation code to add items to the cart. So you write the automation code and it adds an item to the cart and you're all happy. What happens when you run that code again? So the odds are, if you didn't pay attention to the initial states of the application, your code is going to keep adding items in the cart. So it's going to be incrementing to 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, right? And that's going to cause a lot of problems. So people fail to realize that they have to always bring back application back to its initial state whenever you do automation. And this is a huge challenge as well for companies, which affects automation and release cycles as well. Then you have the challenge of maintenance. How many of you as testers have spent time trying to maintain automated tests or build servers or Jenkins machines? That, of course, I cannot see people, but I'm pretty sure the majority of the people online right now would agree that they would have spent considerable amount of time maintaining the tests, right? And recently, I just found a study which found that 30% of a tester's time goes into maintenance. That's crazy. Imagine even if you could shave off 5% of the time, how productive you could be, right? So maintenance has been one of the biggest challenges with testing and test automation in general. And AI specifically is going to help in this aspect. And I'm going to talk about it in a second on how it helps in bringing maintenance down in your automated tests. But this is a big challenge as well. Then we have the challenge of scale. So say you write uh, 10 tests, okay? And then it all passes. Then the next morning, you see half of the tests fail. How many of you have had the situation before? The answer would be probably most of them, right? That's because as and when you start increasing your test suite, you're injecting more code, you're testing more functionalities, and the chances of failures are going to increase. So maintaining growing automated test suite is a huge challenge. That is the scale of automated test suites. And scale, the problem of scale also applies to hardware resources. So say you have, say, 1,000 automated tests, you cannot just keep running it on one single machine, right? That's why you have to go to cloud options and have multiple machines running tests in parallel. You want to run tests faster, you want to get faster feedback. So scale is a huge challenge as well. So now that we understood some of the basic challenges we have with test automation, we can talk about how AI can help resolve, I wouldn't say resolve, but I would say minimize some of these challenges. Because when I say it resolves all your problems, it's like saying 100% testing or 100% defect-free software, which is a misnomer, right? So let's talk about how AI can solve some of these challenges. For this, let's take a simple example. So what you see here is a simple login page. It has a username, password label, a username, password text field, a login button, and then a cancel button. And yeah, so pretty simple login page. And it's made up of multiple attributes. You have IDs, names, classes, tag names, type, label, so on and so forth. Say you're the tester and you write an automation script to validate whether the username and password label is there, and then you enter some username password data and then click on login. Say that's your automation flow, right? So you run it multiple times, it all passes, you're super happy. And then a developer comes and says, you know what? I don't like the label name user name. I'm just going to change it to user. It's just a long name to pronounce. And say he does this change, and in your automation code, if you were using the name attribute, for example, to identify this label, what do you think is going to happen when you run the automation code we just wrote in your previous example? The odds are it's going to fail, right? Because if you're using the name attribute to locate the username label, and now you just change it to user, so the automation code does not know how to identify that particular label, right? And say you were using the ID attribute for identifying this label name, and if the developer changed the ID attribute, that test automation is again going to fail. And this has been the problem for the past 30 years or more, because all the automation frameworks and tools currently, they use what is called single location strategy, or what is called static locators. They use a single attribute to locate a single element on the page, and that's the biggest problem. And if someone changes that attribute, then the automation script fails. That's where AI can help out. With AI, what you could do is you could have dynamic location strategy. So for every element you interact with on the page, instead of just using a single attribute, it's going to extract multiple attributes of that element. So for this example, for that username label, it's going to take the ID, name, class, tag name, type attributes, and all the attributes of that particular label name. So if a developer comes and changes one of the attributes, the test won't fail, because what's going to happen is the AI would say, I see the name attribute change, but let me look at the ID attribute to look at the username label. Oh, then ID attribute change. Let me look at the class attribute. Let me look at the tag attribute, so on and so forth. So it has multiple attributes to work with instead of just a single attribute. So that is dynamic location strategy, and people are using AI for doing that. And as a result of using dynamic location strategy, your maintenance time for your automated tests is going to reduce quite a bit. And the more tests you run, the smarter the AI becomes in locating changes in your UI. So it automatically adapts to changes in the UI based on the historical run of that particular test. So that is something where AI is going to really help out in the UI automation space. The next thing people think about or have questions about is how do you test these AI-based systems, right? And for that, there's some things we as testers could do to interact with these AI-based systems in a more in a better way to find out vulnerabilities in your system. So as testers, these are some of the things we could do when testing AI-based systems. First things first, you need to have more inclusive data. So what do I mean by that? Recently, I won't say recently, but about a couple of years ago, um, Google released the Google Photos app, and they released a AI model which could categorize photos in the Google Photos app. But what happened was it started categorizing African American people as gorillas, and it was categorizing white people or Caucasian people correctly. And there was this discrimination happening in Google Photos app, right? The reason the problem happened was they didn't have diversified data set. So the odds are that problem could have been prevented if the person training Google Photos AI used pictures of brown people, people from different regions like Asia, Africa, Europe. They needed to have diversified data sets, and if they had used a diversified data set to train the Google Photos app, then they could have prevented problems like this. So you need to make sure as testers our data set is diversified and it has different combinations, right? The next thing you want to have is an auditing process. So you need to have a group of people who makes sure that the data sets you're using are diversified, and also they need to make sure the AI model is being trained the right way. It's making decisions the right way based on the data sets you're feeding it, right? We need to have constant monitoring of this whole process happening. For that, you need to have auditing processes in place, probably bi-weekly or monthly or quarterly, whichever works for you, but that is something we need to think about. And just like SQL injection attacks, the same is possible for AI models as well. So we need to test for adversarial attacks. So for example, let's just take the Google Photos app again. Potentially, what people could do is they could modify a couple of pixels and inject rogue code in those pixels and skew the learning of the AI model so that it starts making wrong decisions. And because of that, when you release a product with this AI model, it's not going to function according to what you want it to do, right? And it's going to cause a lot of problems in production and to the consumers. So you need to test for adversarial attacks. So some simple examples would be, say you have an image detection app. What happens when you give an image like this? Is it going to detect this image as a human, a female? Because a lot of people wear funky glasses like this. say your Mardi Gras festival or St. Patrick's Day festival going on, people wear different costume and dresses, right? And if people have glasses like these, is your image recognition app going to detect this as a human? Those are the edge cases we need to think about. Similarly, if you're working in the autonomous car industry, what happens if your car hits a stop sign like this, filled with graffitis and pictures? Is it going to stop, or is it going to continue to keep going? These are the things we need to think about. So based on what I just discussed, as testers, we've been doing this even before AI came into the picture, right? We wanted to make sure our test data is diversified, and we always thought about edge cases. And the same thing applies right now as well. But and now it's all the more important we need to do that, because the learning of the AI model is still a black box. No one knows how it makes decisions. So as testers, the only thing we could do is we can make sure the data sets are good and the decision making process of the AI model is according to what we're expecting. So those are some things we really need to think about. Of course, just like any other systems, we have challenges with applying AI to testing and systems in general. Some of the challenges are we have deep fakes where you can generate videos of people saying something, although they're not saying it at all, right? So deep fakes is a big problem. In fact, a couple of months ago, there was a video on Twitter of President Obama saying something, and apparently he was not the one saying it. So deepfake is becoming a big problem. Then we have surveillance of citizens. Um, Recently, a survey was conducted across 175 countries, and it found that about 76 countries use AI for surveilling citizens, right? And the US, Germany, China are included in that as well. Like location tracking, facial recognition, those are type of surveillance people are using AI for. So how do we make sure that that is applied for ethical purposes, right? That is a big challenge right now, which people are facing and trying to solve. Then you can generate fake comments using AI models, and then you can inject spam and fraudulent data, just like how I was talking about the pixel manipulation. So you could do that as well. So there are a lot of challenges with applying AI to your systems as well. So these are some of the things as testers we need to think about, right? And this is how we need to approach our interaction with AI-based systems as well. So what's the future of AI-based testing look like? So till now, we covered some of the basics of AI. We talked about challenges and with test automation and how AI could solve some of the challenges and how as testers we can test AI-based systems. So those are the things we have covered till now. But the next thing we need to think about is what is the future of AI-based testing. So currently I work with a lot of AI-based companies, and these are some of the things which they're currently working on, and this is going to be the future of where testing is heading. And this is something I really wanted to discuss so that you know what's coming in the upcoming months and what is already being implemented. So first thing is autonomous testing, right? So potentially you could have an AI model, an AI in production, observing how users are using your app in production. And based on that, it can start suggesting what are the common flows exercised by users. And then it would say, hey, these are some common flows people have used in production. And could I create a test for you, right? And then if you say yes, it could start creating tests automatically for us based on actual production data, right? you don't need to assume what a person is going to do, but now we actually have data based on validated data in production. AI is creating tests for us. So say, for example, let's take an example of an insurance application. Say you have an insurance application and you have a login page, and you log in to your insurance application, and throughout the day, the AI sees that multiple users do 4 common flows, which is trying to get print out of your insurance ID card, trying to pay your bills, trying to view uh, renewals, trying to say view outstanding charges, for example. And if multiple people do this again and again, what the AI could do is at the end of the day, it could say, hey, today these are the flows your production users did, and they did it these many times. Could I create a test for these flows, right? And also it could say that the this particular these particular users are, say for example, I used same username password combination multiple times to log into my application. It could also say, hey, you use the same username password, could I create a reusable component for you so that you don't have to keep repeating it, right? And when you say yes to both of these things which I just mentioned, it's going to create tests for you with reusable components as well. So autonomous testing is something uh, which is already there and people are working on it, and that is something which is really relevant to current state of testing and test automation. So we have heard of various agile process development processes, right? We have ATDD, we have BDD, then you have SDD, which is Stack Overflow Driven Development. But now you have what is called UI-based TDD. So what could potentially happen is whenever developers start working on a feature, they have these mockups, right? Images of how the feature should be implemented. So now, when you have these mockups, you can have an AI model scan these mockups, and and by the time, and then in parallel, the developer starts working and developing the feature based on these mockups. And by the time the developer finishes implementing the feature, the AI model would have automatically created a test from the mockups, right? And you literally just run the test created by the AI against the developed feature. So UI-based TDD is something which people are currently working on, and it's going to help us quite a bit, right? And the way they do this is they train the AI model with say for example you have this login page which you see on the screen, right? So they train the AI model with different types of login pages, thousands and thousands of login pages. So whenever it has a markup of a login page, it automatically now knows that what is a username field, what is a username label, what's a password field. So it already knows based on the historical data, and that's how it creates the test for us. It doesn't magically happen. It's the historical training which gives the ability for the AI models to create tests for us. So those are actually some of the things happening in terms of the future of AI-based testing as well. I wanted to uh, take a lot of questions because I know these are some things which people are interested in. So that's why I want to keep my webinar short. Um, in case you have more questions, of course, we have another 15 about 10 15 minutes to answer questions, but I have a lot of information on my website about some of the things which I just talked about, and I blog about these topics as well and share news and updates on these AI based uh, things happening in technology. So if you're interested, subscribe to my blog. Of course, you can always email me, and you can always check out my website because I already have resources there as well. So with that being said, I'll hand it back to Smita, and if there are any questions, I can answer that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Raj. Firstly, thank you for giving us such an insightful session on AI and about testing, using AI and testing AI. So thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, you have been studying the AI field for a long time and have become an expert. What are some things that you learned along the way that you can suggest for someone just getting into AI-based testing?
That's a great question. First thing I need to clarify is I'm not an expert in AI based testing, and I haven't been doing it for several years, but yes, I've been doing it for about 3 years now. Just want to let you know, I'm no way an expert because there are a lot of super smarter people in the industry right now. But thanks for letting me know that I'm an expert. But now coming to your question, so if you're starting into AI-based testing, what are some of the things I learned, and what are some of the things which you could do to get started in this area? So let's cover the first part. So when I started uh, looking into these AI-based systems and companies using AI for testing, some things I learned was for everything, they need data. So every time you use a particular, say, testing tool, or you go to a website, we gather data and loads of data. And all these data, what happens is they go into separate locations like databases, and we have data scientists who actually try to figure out different patterns based on this data. So first thing I learned was, yeah, a lot of data is needed to ensure AI-based tools are successful in doing what it's supposed to do, right? The second thing is I learned was anyone can learn about AI and AI-based testing. There's so many resources online. Personally, what I did was I took a lot of courses on Coursera. I think you would probably see it on my LinkedIn profile, the courses I took. And then I started reading about AI as well. And the courses I took went in depth into how the algorithms work as well. So that gave me an idea on where you can apply certain algorithms or models compared to other areas, right? So data and self learning were a couple of things which I picked up from this whole experience. So my advice for anyone who wants to get started in this field would be just to kind of what I did, where start reading about um, AI-based testing, start taking courses on Coursera. Andrew Ng is like the godfather of AI. If you don't know who he is, just Google him. The first, I think, 200 hits is going to be him. But he has a lot of great courses and not technical. He has a lot of really high-level AI courses as well. He has a course called AI for Everyone. I highly recommend that. That's a good start for people to get to know about AI and how it applies to systems. And then start reading resources and blogs on how people are using AI for testing. I shared some information here. And similarly, there are a lot of people in the industry who are trying to share that information as well. So get in touch with them, read what they write, and yeah, and before you know it, you will become an so-called expert as well.
Thank you, Raj. That was a good insight into how to go about it. There is a follow-up question on any recommendations on the books. Would there be any recommendation on specific books for this?
Sure. There were a couple of books. Actually, I also have that list on my website. So some things which come to my mind is there's a book called Weapons of Math Destruction,
Mhm.
MATH, Math Destruction. That was a great book for anyone who's interested on how AI is impacting humans in a positive and a negative way. Um, and then there's a book called Being Mortal in the Age of Artificial Intelligence by Max Tegmark. That is a great book. Those two books can help anyone get an idea on how AI is applied to uh, technology and different aspects of human interactions as well. And one thing I wanted to mention was Max Tegmark, this author who I mentioned the book for the book Being Mortal in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. He heads an institute called the Future of Life Institute, and just Google it, Future of Life Institute, and subscribe to the newsletter. That's how I get a lot of news on how on AI based technology. They're a nonprofit organization, and what they do is they have hundreds of research projects going on in their institute, and their sole goal is to ensure the AI systems are safe for human beings. And they have podcasts, newsletters, resources, and definitely definitely highly recommend checking them out as well. And there are more resources on my website. So if you go to the my blog link over here, at the end of the page, you're going to see a list of books I read every year, and in that you will see AI related books as well. And of course, just email me or tweet me, and I can share more resources after the webinar as well.
Yeah, sure, Raj. That's again, thank you again for all these recommendations on books. And definitely, folks, I think the best thing to do is go to his website and check out the resources and tweet him or email him if we need more. I'll quickly ask you just under a couple of questions we have here.
Sure.
Yeah. So the next one is, can you talk about some of the tools you are evaluating? In fact, there are 2-3 questions on similar topic, like on similar things. So I'm going to ask you them together. How AI is used in automation tools to identify the elements to automate, and yeah, what are the good AI-based automation tools out there in the market currently?
I think that person wants me to be out of a job. No, I'm just kidding. So, I'm not the best person to mention what are the best AI-based tools out there. I work with a couple of them, and I cannot mention names. But the point is, I can talk about the concept, right? So all these AI-based companies are using the dynamic location strategy, which I was just talking about. To your question, Smita, the person asked how they detect the elements. The way they do that is there's this AI underneath the hood, and for every when you hit record, right, and record a flow, say a login flow, for every element you interact with, the AI underneath the hood extracts multiple attributes for these elements, right? And that's how it knows that if one attribute of an element in your recording changes, it has other attributes which is it has already extracted to locate the particular element. So this dynamic extraction strategy is the way they're doing it right now. Of course, they're probably using different kinds of algorithms, but their strategy is basically dynamic location strategy, and that's what uh, some of the AI-based vendors use. One thing I would caution is that a lot of people use AI as a marketing gimmick. So any tool you evaluate and which says AI-based tool, ask them a pinpointed question on how their AI works. because they should be able to answer that. So just exercise caution, but there are some companies who are legitimately trying to solve the maintenance problem using dynamic location strategy. But yeah, that's my long answer for that question. I cannot name tools, but I have written about some of them. You can check out my blog post and website for it. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Raj. That helps. I'll take this one last question here.
Sure.
It says, I'm sure someone has asked this somewhere before, but we talk about AI supporting UI-based TDD and other areas for building test scenarios. What do you suggest for how best to test the AI itself to ensure it is working properly? In other words, testing the tool that is creating the tests.
Right, testing the test. That's a great question. So I think I mentioned this during the webinar. So currently the working of an AI is a black box. So no one knows how it makes its decisions, right? So only recently there was a study at MIT which was conducted where they were able to make the AI rationalize its decision-making process. And similarly, IBM, Facebook, they just started initiatives to make AI more open and figure out how it's making those decisions. But still, work is going on, and it's in its primitive stage, right? So for now, the AI, the way the AI makes decisions is still a black box, right? So you cannot test inside an AI. But what you could do is you could give different type of data sets and see how the AI is learning, right? So for example, if your data set, I gave an example of detecting buttons, image of buttons from mockups. For that, what you could do is when you give an image of a square button, round button, rectangle button, see how AI is detecting them, right? Say if you give an image of a square button, if it's saying I detected a round button, then that's a problem, right? So those are the things we need to look out for, the data sets and basically how the AI is making its decisions based on the data sets. So that's the maximum we could do right now as testers, and that would probably be my approach.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that approach a lot, Raj. I mean, from all I understand about AI, all the testing that we can do there is probably going to be more like teaching a student. Like you keep teaching, we don't know yet how much they know, and we keep testing. And only when the confidence level goes really up high and we say, okay, hopefully it will not have a wrong answer. So we'll keep building on the answers, keep building on the questions and teach the system. And when we see that, okay, out of 100 times, 1,000 times, million times, we did not get an error, maybe it's okay. But we still can't say it for sure when it's because depending
Exactly.
on like the data set.
And you bring up a good point, Smita, because another thing I really want to emphasize is AI is not a solution to all problems. It's a tool to help you do your job better, just like automation tools, just like your defect management tools, right? So you have to view it as an aid to help in testing. It's not the silver bullet which actually fixes all your problems, right? Once you have that kind of mindset, which we usually have, then you can approach these systems in a better way. The problem happens when you rely totally on one system, and then when it gives false positives, and then you get, pissed that, man, why does this happen, right? So just have that mindset that it's a aid to help in the overall testing process, and nothing can still replace humans, because they really need us, no matter AI or whatever, to do testing. So just keep that in mind as well.
That was a brilliant concluding tip, Raj, that AI is not the silver bullet. So just like automation, keep evaluating, keep using it effectively, but that's not the solution only. It just supports you. So with that said, Raj, thank you again for today's session. And I hope the testers enjoyed the session just as much as I did. And I am sure they all found it to be really helpful.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, and I hope to see you at STPCon soon, Raj. So thank you.
Sure. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Well, everyone, this concludes our webinar for today. And thank you for joining. And more importantly, thank you for being engaging and making the most of the webinar for yourself and for the whole group. And if you want to see more sessions like what Raj just gave one, and you wish to learn more about testing, do join us at the STPCon Spring 2020. The keynotes and workshops, and the entire program has been published, and you can go and have a look at it at stpcon.com. Do not forget to grab your discounts on early bird tickets, which will be on sale until February 14th. And again, at any point, should you have any queries on registrations, do email them at info@softwaretestpro.com. And also let me remind you, the call for submissions for the webinars for this year is open and will be open all year round. Please do send in your proposals as soon as possible to pick up the slots for you of your choice. And stay tuned for more webinars at softwaretestpro.com. We have an upcoming webinar, which is the ROI for test automation. Are you missing it? On 22nd of January 2020, the speaker is Paul Merrill, who is the CEO and principal consultant at Bayford Fairmont LLC. In this talk, learn what your ROI could be with test automation and how streamlining the process of developing digital assets starts with sound technical practices and how it can and can't be measured within your organization. So if the subject interests you, please do sign up for the same at softwaretestpro.com. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week ahead. See you all in San Diego in March next year. This year, and keep practicing your testing skills. Thank you.